I was super skinny and I could barely hold my head up in bed. And now they're telling me, because you have a very aggressive cancer, you do 6 months of the most intensive chemotherapy, followed by 6 weeks of radiation every day. All of a sudden, something was starting in my head. Everything I heard was pointing to the real Messiah of the Jewish people, and my whole goal was to disprove this. I was raised in Southern California, and we went every week to synagogue for Sunday school, and then we'd go to all the high holidays, and we were very involved in our synagogue. We made a trip to Israel when I was 12 years old, and it was 1966, 5 months before the 1967 war. So I remember standing somewhere up high and looking out, and a tour guide telling us, that is the old city, but we're not allowed to go there. And I thought, oh, wow, I wonder what it would be like. And my mom was actually raised in Israel from 12 to 24 years old, and she served in the Irgun. She was a spy for the British, and she was also the voice of the underground radio. So I have a lot of Israel in my blood, even though I'm living in California. I was really wanting to know more about my Judaism because we heard stories in Sunday school. We'd hear Noah and the Ark, the Exodus, but nothing really pulled together Judaism from the beginning to today, to the end, and what God was doing with the Jewish people. I couldn't make that connection. I was the only Jewish person in my elementary school, and we would sing Christmas carols, and when the word Jesus would come up, for some reason I knew, you don't do that, you don't say that, so I would shut my mouth my entire life until I went to college, and I got a freshman Christian roommate. And I kind of looked at Christians as people who needed a crutch. They just needed something to make them feel good, but they had no basis for their beliefs. And so, but she was a Christian, and her boyfriend was very nice. And he would talk to me all the time about the Lord. So I finally said to him, you know what, Gary, I am going to prove to you that you have nothing to stand on in what you believe. And he said, okay, that's fine. Could I give you one book to read while you're in your search? I said, absolutely. So he gave me the book called Late Great Planet Earth. It's the first time that I read something that put all the pieces together, where I could see where the Jewish people started in Genesis, what the big plan was from the beginning to the end. And what blew me away was the prophecies. We never learned about prophecy at synagogue. God had specific predictions that he had said were going to happen thousands of years in the future, occurred exactly like he said they were, and that they all matched up to one person as being the Messiah, being Yeshua. I was really, honestly, very upset because the last thing I wanted to do was become a Christian. So one of the things I did in searching is I went to my rabbi and I said, could you please explain to me Isaiah 53? Because this really sounds like the New Testament Messiah to me. It doesn't sound like the Tanakh, what we believe in. And he looked at it and he said, I'm sorry, but I can't explain it to you. I don't know. Everything I heard and everything I was reading was pointing to Yeshua being the real Messiah of the Jewish people. And my whole goal was to disprove this. So I was laying there in my bed and I just yelled out to God that night. I just said, you know what, God? I do not want to become a Christian. But I said, if you want to save me, you just go ahead and do that. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, it's over, it's done, nothing's going to happen. I can just walk out and we are good. All of a sudden, I was very, very aware that something was starting in my head and telling me that he was cleansing me of my sin. And it went all the way from my head through my whole body. And I went to bed that night. I woke up the next morning. I was a totally different person. I had totally different reasons for living. I was standing at free speech platform at my college and giving my testimony to hundreds of people to tell them that God is real and that Jesus was the Messiah of the Jewish people. I was married and I was divorced after a long marriage. And after that divorce, a few years later, I got very, very ill. I had fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome. I was tormented by it for about 8 years. It was getting worse and worse. And then I get a diagnosis of endometrial cancer. They said, oh, we need to tell you that you have stage 3C. That means you have a good chance of survival if you do 6 months of the most intensive chemotherapy followed by 6 weeks of radiation every day. I was in shock because I was so sick from fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue. I was super skinny and I could barely hold my head up in bed. And now they're telling me I'm going to need this chemotherapy. And all I'm thinking is it's going to kill me. There was a point after I was diagnosed with this cancer, I just started repenting. It was just a time of him and me. It was a New Year's Eve. And I was pouring out my heart and crying. And I said, Lord, I am so sorry. I didn't even know how sinful my heart was. At that time, I said, I'm going to stay up all night until you show me that you're here with me. And I made it to 3 a.m. and I went to sleep and I felt nothing. But I kept up every day asking him to show me, and I kept repenting. I've been eating perfectly organic, hardly any foods, trying to be healthy because food would make me so sick. And I said, I'm done. You can take me home to heaven. I'm fine with that. You can leave me in bed for the rest of my life. I'm surrendering to you, Lord. You do whatever you want to do with my life. What he did was he enabled me to pray like I never prayed before. I started within 1 or 2 weeks, staying up till 2 or 3 in the morning every night reading the Bible. I couldn't put it down because every word was like the very breath of God to me. I started eating chips and ice cream and gluten and dairy and red meat every single day. But I kept reading my Bible and praying and repenting. I went from, I couldn't barely walk down my driveway to my mailbox. And one day I go, we're going to have to do this. And so I did it. And I go, I did it and not in excruciating pain. Over a period of 8 months to a year, he healed me of all those 75 conditions and endometrial cancer. He healed me of the thing that I struggled with since I was a baby. And that was really, really severe anxiety. And I became strong and I wasn't afraid. And because I had the God of the universe that can do anything behind me. Did I convert to another religion? No, I did not. Jews have always waited for their Messiah for thousands of years, and I found that Yeshua, Jesus, was the Jewish Messiah, so I remain Jewish, and I have found the Jewish Messiah. When I came to Israel in March of 2012, it was a whole new Israel, and I saw the old city. I felt like I had come home. The Lord had me write a travel guide to Israel for believers. I started bringing groups to Israel, and then I started a nonprofit for Israel to educate believers on the importance of Israel and working with Holocaust survivors. And I am so grateful to my Lord for what He's done for me.